Welcome to Ministers Talking a weekly program where Rec BRZ and Rec Z and their guests chat about current affairs, world events, spiritual principles, and any old they want to talk about. Based on the new thought philosophy and ancient wisdoms, Ministers Talking shares a visionary perspective of the evolving spiral called spiritual living. Join us each week as we explore the emerging paradigm of life on planet Earth and beyond.
And good morning, dear ones. Reverend Robert with you here this morning.
Reverend Z over here.
And this week we're three ministers talking shit. Because we've got a brand new friend and a brand new guest to the network. Reverend Ogun Holder is here from Massachusetts, so it's not quite insanely early his time, which is wonderful.
Hey, it's insanely early for me. Okay, see what you want. My alarm went off at 8 a.m. and I was like, "Why am I getting up at this point?"
Exactly, right on. A little bit about Reverend Ogun, born in Barbados, raised there as well. Currently living in Boston, Massachusetts, and serving Unity on the River in Amesbury, Massachusetts, right there on the New Hampshire border. So glad you're with us this morning, Reverend Ogun. Welcome to Ministers Talking Chat.
Thank you. I am thrilled to be here.
Good. Yes. We've been having a great discussion so far this morning, and really we're talking about beliefs. Imagine that on this show. What do you believe? How do you come to believe that? And can you change that? And what happens when you realize maybe what you've believed for a long point in your long period of your life just doesn't turn out to be true? Rev Z, you want to get us started here?
Yeah, well, I love this quote by this phrase, however you want to state it, by Abraham Hicks, that goes, a belief is just a thought that you keep on thinking, right? So we step into this atmosphere of being captivated by events and experiences and ideas in our lives that we had some good affinity to or some bad affinity to, that sends us down a track of what we believe. And once it takes a hold of us physically, mentally, chemically, emotionally, then it's hard to uproot that unless you change your thinking and change your life.
Yes, exactly. Reverend Ogun, give us some idea, your opening thoughts on how we got to where we are as far as our discussion around beliefs today.
Well, I mean, to piggyback off of Reverend Z there, our beliefs are. I like to think of it as the what drives us, whether they're conscious or unconscious. It's where we make our decisions from. It's every thought, word, action, I think originates from a belief you hold. And so for many of us, we just go ahead saying, thinking, doing, and don't reverse engineer the process to go based on what's happening right now in my life because of my words, thoughts, and actions, and things may not be going the way we want them to go. We have choice. We could either rail against the world, it's unfair, it's mistreated me, this is not okay, or we could, like I said, reverse engineer the process and go, well, if I'm saying, doing, and thinking these things, and this is how this is how the world is showing up, and I don't want it this way. Am I going to be brave enough, courageous enough, willing enough to look at the beliefs that I'm holding and maybe think, do I need to change those? Do I need to address those? And here's the thing, this can go either way, right? This is entirely an agnostic process. It wouldn't say use your powers for good or use your powers for evil, right? So this is an agnostic process. It can go either way.
Yes. Yeah. And I personally remember that there was a time in my life, and I've used this story before because it so exemplifies this, that prior to finding new thought and science of mind and religious science and all this, I was just out there working my way in the world, and people would ask me, how's your day going? And I would tell them, and this would that you get that question every single day, right? Somebody asks you how you doing, how's it going, yada yada. My answer was always the same. Things are going great. Every day starts beautifully, but invariably along comes some a-hole and mucks it all up. Right? I used a little different language back then. And even without science of mind, eventually I woke up to the fact that, wait a minute, every single day somebody does come along and muck it up.
Yeah.
Something would happen that I would use to blame the other, to say, wait a minute, this is your fault. You just messed up my great day.
Yeah.
And eventually I realized, no, because I had said this enough and often enough that I started to actually believe it.
Mm-hmm.
And people would say, you don't really believe that, do you? Yeah, no, I really believe that, man. No, you don't want to believe that. Yeah, I really believe that. Eventually I woke up to, damn, I've been duping myself this whole time.
Right.
Yeah.
There's a better way to do it.
And one of the key things I think about belief is, we always hear belief being associated with truth, right? And they're not the same thing. Truth is something that stands on its own. It doesn't need the truth that it is raining needs no explanation, right?
Right.
But if you start saying, I believe it's raining in Massachusetts and I'm down here in Colorado, well, that may or may not hold water. And so when we begin to operate and control our lives based on a belief that is not foundationally standing on truth, now we have problems. And so because the truth has been, I would say, skewed, if you will, by all of these belief statements, we get the two confused, and so people go off on tangents on a belief thinking it's being based on the truth, and then it's a problem.
Right.
Well, truth is relative. So I always make that delineation between big T. I can tell y'all is early. Big T truth and little T truth. So to give a great example, to piggyback off your metaphor about rain, here in New England, there's this wonderful phenomenon called spitzing. Y'all ever heard of spitzing? It's when it's rained, it's just a little bit frozen, so it's super cold. Every once in a while, it's like an ice particle, because it's that cold. It's not cold enough to snow or turn to ice or sleet, but it's right there in between. So you go there I go there and it's raining, but it's not raining. And so, it took a couple years before I would say to my folks up here, like, I've only been in the New England area for 5 years. And I'm like, what is this? And they're like, oh, it's just spitzing. I'm like, what the hell is spitzing? Like, this is a new thing that I'm hearing about for the first time, right? So to that point, somebody might be walking out there saying it's raining. Somebody out there saying, no, it's sleeting, it's spitzing. Like, what is the truth? The truth, lower T truth, is always relative. It's contextual. It's based on our frame of reference. It's based on our history. It's based, again, coming out of those beliefs. And this is inherently a problem when we take that small T truth and try to turn it into the big T truth, those unquestionable things. So the unquestionable truth, to use that metaphor, is like, there's some participation coming out the sky. Like, there's no doubt about that. That's the big T truth. The small T truth is, what do we call it? What is it? How do we, interpret it? So I'm in the spitzing thinking this is horrible, and everybody's like, oh no, thank God it's just spitzing and not like, right, we in blizzard conditions, right? So it's a very complex, nuanced sort of thing, and unfortunately, so many of us are, we either don't have the energy, the time, the willpower, the fortitude to dig into it all and right, and examine it and deconstruct it and do the work with it. And I understand it. We got kids to raise, we got bills to pay, we got all sorts of things that we gotta get done. We got a pandemic that, like, right, has sapped everybody's like regular sense of mental functioning. So I get it, and it's the most important work we can do for ourselves in the world, to dig in and dig down into realizing what we have individually labeled as big T truth versus small T truth, and all the things in between. And as I mentioned, the pandemic, it's been fascinating to watch how things like the pandemic, even things like the recent election, how people use them to either reinforce what they believe is the big T or the small T truth, or use them as an opportunity to do more of that, like inner reflecting, breaking down, deconstruction.
Right. Well, and you bring to mind the with the big T and the little T from an African ancient Egyptian perspective, that would fall under the law of polarity. There is one thing that has a polarity swing that you have to deal with. And so the difference between a thing is only a degree. For example, there is technically no such thing as hot and cold, right? There is a temperature, and based on a degree, it becomes hot or cold. But the difference between where hot starts and cold start is a small fraction of movement, and it's very different on how everyone experiences. 60 degrees in Colorado is fabulous. 60 degrees in Florida, people got fur coats on. So that the thing that we have to begin to get our heads around, and this falls directly into the idea of belief, is that we live in a polarity. And that, as one guy says, there are going to be highs and lows, but I want my lows to be high lows. I want to get in that sweet spot. So my movement is just a little rhythm that moves back and forth. And then when I translate that into thought, that means I am keeping my eye on the middle ground that creates a smooth wake as we go through life. And I think that's what everyone's striving for. But sometimes those beliefs get us off because we're thinking, 32 degrees is absolutely freezing. And I can tell you that's not always the case.
Part of it is we can't.
You know what? Coming from Barbados, that is absolutely the case. Put that out right there, right now.
Yep.
That's my big T truth. 32 is always freezing. 40 is always freezing for me.
And here in Colorado, it'll be 32, and there'll be guys walking around in shorts and a sleeveless T-shirt downtown. So, it strikes me again that we're in this place where part of it comes into personal experience. So, like, we talk about temperature. Anybody that's ever shared a bed with another human being knows how that temperature, everybody's got that different temperature differential, right? But we come to this place where if I don't have a direct experience of something, then I really don't have any alternative but to take somebody else's word for it.
Right? Yeah.
And that's where a good con man can sway a nation.
Indeed.
Simply because you said it earlier, Reverend Ogun, right? I'm too busy doing life to have to go do the research. And we hear this on like, I did the research, and in my research, it's like, you didn't research shit. You went and found a post on your favorite bias political bubble website, whichever bias you've got. Trust me, they're all there, right?
Yeah.
And you just took what somebody else said and said, hey, that seems like that might be right. I'm just going to believe that. That's a lot easier than trying to figure out what the capital T truth is. Americans, specifically, in my opinion, we just love to take the easy way out.
We do, and it's also to your point, not just direct experience, but I would say we don't feel any way about it until that direct experience seems to take something from us, right? So if it's a direct experience is benefiting us, we're definitely not questioning it. We're gonna go along with it. #racism. But when it directly affects us or we are emotionally moved by it, then we're gonna begin to ask questions. We saw this in the civil rights era when the majority country didn't start to sway till they saw people in the South being fire hosed and chased by dogs. We saw it this summer when, with the murder of George Floyd, and all of a sudden, most of white America is waking up to, oh my God, this is horrible. And most of Black Americans like, what are you talking about? This is our Tuesday, right? So it's until, and to your point, in a way, it was sort of a direct experience of seeing it, but
True. Yeah.
but for the majority of people who've never experienced this, who've never been on the receiving end of it, who don't have a concept of what it means and what it feels like, it is harder to feel like we are part of the solution, right? For this, that we have to shift as well. This came up in a recent podcast I was listening to. I don't remember what it was, but the question was, might have been the Daily Show. How do you say to a poor white person who's been struggling their whole life to make ends meet that they have some sort of privilege, right? Like, how do you convince them of that? That's a very hard sell. For them when they've been struggling just as hard to put food on the table. And it's, again, not a simple solution, but when people have raised that with me, I say, well, look at it this way. If a poor Black man and a poor white man are pulled over in the middle of the night and arrested, or pulled over and try to object to what's happening, there's a more likelihood of who's going to walk away and who's not, who's going to be gently put in handcuffs and who might be tased and shot. That's what we're speaking of in terms of that. But it's a hard sell. And at the same point, because of what's been happening, this summer and all that, it's people are waking up to it. People are asking questions. People are being educated. Can I put a plug for a book study got coming up?
Yeah, absolutely.
So in mid-January, me and another Unity minister are going to be, Reverend Kelly Isla is her name. We're going to be doing a book study on Caste, The Origins of Our Discontent by Isabel Wilkerson. And it's a phenomenal read. It makes you rethink everything around how this country is structured from a racist point of view. And the thing that blew my mind the most of all, you're gonna love this. The thing that blew my mind when I was reading this book that I didn't know before was when the Nazis were creating their programs around how to treat the Jews, they looked to the American South for inspiration and came up with the conclusion that there were parts of the American South that were too harsh for them to take on. That blew my mind, right? We hold the Nazis up as the standard of the ultimate evil. So, one example was in the South, Jim Crow and before, they had the one drop rule. If there's any if there's any black blood, even a drop, even if you look white, you pass for white. If there's any drop of African American blood in you, you are not part of the dominant white caste. Okay, and you're treated as inferior. Even the Nazis said that was too cruel because they were like, well, if a Jew has a drop of German blood in them, that makes them partially German. So we're going to bring them in with us. So when I was reading that, I was like, so glad I'm born now.
and here is the real, in my mind, dichotomy or the schizophrenic nature of this whole thing, in that I grew up in the South during the 60s, where you had The Help. If you remember the movie The Help, you had black women in the households of whites that basically raised the kids, right? Took care of the whole household. And so imagine the dichotomy or the schizophrenic nature that came about when, and this wasn't all the case, but for those cases where there was some racism going on, here's a person I'm being taught to hate and whatever. But when I scrape my knee, that's the person who fixes it. When I need my dinner, that is the person who gives it to me. When I need a hug, that is the person who gives it to me. And so now this schizophrenic thing about a belief crops up because I'm being told to dislike or downplay a person who's providing everything I need to be a human being.
Yeah.
Imagine growing up with that and trying to flip that script, right? And so, or the vice versa, you know, as the help, you're looking at a standard of how you think a certain family lives based on their color, but you're in that house helping to run it, and you see all of that's a myth. This, all the things that we think of being, or all the stuff that's projected on being white is not what it's told to be, but we believed it on both sides. And now we got this mess, you know, of systemic racism because it has been ingrained into us, just like a habit. And after we do it for a while, we don't think about it. It just automatically happens. And so there we go.
So, gentlemen, we've got a question in the comment box today, and generally this is not a question and answer show, but I feel we've just got to look at this. Isn't it true that if you believe in systemic racism, then it exists, but if you don't, then it does not? Who wants to and keep in mind we've got 10 minutes, so
Okay.
keep it. Who wants to jump in and answer Stacy's question?
Well, I'll take a quick 1 minute shot at it, in that because we don't, as Reverend Ogun said, because we don't experience it doesn't make it not exist, right? Systemic racism, I mean, there have been, especially recently, a lot of studies where even down to no one has to see your face. If they look at your name on a resume and it sounds black, it doesn't even get a second look, right? That's where systemic racism is very easily outlined. And it's not even about a person. It's a name that is associated with another thing, i.e. a black person or a person of color. They don't get through. When we can get beyond that, we're making some progress, because that's ludicrous, right? I don't even know. And the person with the African-American name or a person of color name has a better set of skills to fill the job than the other person with a so-called white name.
What I'll say is, to use another metaphor, ancient cultures believe that when the sun went down, it went away, like it ceased to exist. And we all know that's not true. When it's night out, the sun still exists, even though we can't see it, right? But part of it is that because we know, as intelligent scientific people, we know the sun didn't go down, the earth spun, right? The earth spinning, sun's not going anywhere. The earth spins. We're in the shadow on the dark side, and the sun still exists. So that's part of our, scientific belief. And therefore, we don't have a question today if the sun doesn't exist or not. There was a time that people did that. There was a time that people believed the earth was the center of the universe. And that wasn't the fact. That wasn't the truth. And the other part I'll say this: we all have our own implicit biases, whether we believe them or not. And there's not a skin color thing. It's not a gender thing. Every human being, because of how our personality develops based on things that happen to us in our life, we all have these implicit biases that I would say are part of our belief system that we are not even conscious of. And they dictate how we respond to situations in our life. And again, our work is if we really want to grow into the wholeness that we are, we got to dig into those and examine those and question those and change the ones that are deemed necessary. And if because we choose to believe that it doesn't exist, there is a chance that you as an individual may therefore walk and operate in the world as if it doesn't for you personally. But that doesn't mean it's still not out there. We see countless examples of this quite recently. And this was another one that blew my mind. Quite recently in Florida somewhere, I think, we read the story of it was an interracial couple who put their house on the market, and they got one, realtor came in to give them an estimate, and they got one estimate. They removed all traces. The wife was black. They removed all traces of her existence. They took down all the family pictures. She wasn't there for any of the walkthroughs or estimates by the realtor. And when that house, and that's the only change they made. And then when the second estimate was given, it was tens of thousands of dollars higher, simply by removing the presence of a Black individual from the home. And that's just a mild example of what still happens in the world today. So we don't have to believe if systemic racism exists or not. Us believing it doesn't change the fact that it does, and it does because every day we see evidence of it.
Right. If there is a physical manifestation going on in the world, if we see a manifestation, then there has to be someone behind that believing that thought, casting that thought into the universe to create. So I agree. Anytime, and we see it in so many places. I was in telephone sales for a while, and I was taught straight up, our product does not attract Black people. If the person on the phone sounds Black, you can pretty much guarantee it's not a sale. Just get off the phone and go.
Yeah.
And I took that as a challenge to say, no, that ain't true. And did very well by talking to the people I was told not to.
Now, to dig into that question a little bit further, how do we change the system and dismantle systemic racism is, yes, we begin by believing it shouldn't exist. And we begin to change our own personal lens to not so much not see it, but to interact with everyone as if it doesn't exist. And I don't know if this is where the question was coming from. If I don't believe it and hold it in my heart, therefore I don't walk in the world as if I don't have these biases. So I would say that's where it begins, by realizing that we all have that inherent divinity, divine value. We are all equal. There's equality and equanimity is the truth, the big T truth of who we are. But we've got to then take that from just a belief or lens from which we want to see the world, and then go like, well, here's how it's not showing up that way. Right. What's mine to do to shift that or to change that?
And that speaks directly to something we all agreed upon at the very beginning, is we have to change our experiences. We have to get involved. We have to be active in life to dismantle any belief, whether we hold it dear or not. We have to qualify it or verify it to some degree by getting an experiential of it. Because, how many of us, and I would submit all of us, has had someone offer us a food that we said, oh, I don't like that. I don't think that's a good thing to eat. It's nasty or whatever. But once you taste it and eat it, you say, oh man, I've been missing this for a long time, because I had no experience and I was casting judgment on it based on God knows what. But it was that direct experience, that interchange, that made the thing of a dislike to a like.
That did not hold true for me in Brussels sprouts. I don't care how you make them. Trust me, my daughter loves them and she's tried. I don't care how you make them.
You got to put more sea salt on them. That'll do it.
I don't care what you put on them. One time she made them with like so much butter you could barely taste the Brussels sprouts. I just licked the butter off. No. So I get what you're saying, and exceptions to every rule. Let's agree to disagree now.
I love Brussels sprouts. What do you mean?
To each their own. Right? She even tried wrapping them in bacon one time, because I live and die around bacon, and I was like, you know what? It's good going in, but that Brussels sprouts taste, man. It's just there's nothing's gonna cover that up.
Folks, we're gonna dig up Reverend Ogun's sister's recipe for bacon wrapped Brussels sprouts. Or your daughter's, excuse me. We're gonna dig up that recipe. I think it sounds pretty easy, right? Bacon wrapped Brussels sprouts. So if you want to try that at home, you're welcome to. We've done it again. We've about run out of. We have run out of time here. So thanks for sticking around for a little extra with us. This is Ministers Talking Shit. It's a production of the New Thought Media Network. It happens every Friday morning, 7 a.m. Mountain Time, and you can catch the back episodes on our video page on Facebook. on our YouTube page, and on the archives on our website, ntmedia.org. Thank you so much for being with us this morning, gentlemen. We're already running over, so let's give the folks a final thought, and then we'll let them get into the rest of their day.
Well, you always know mine: educate, conversate, and activate. That's what's going to change it all.
I like that. I have to borrow that. That's a good one. Mine is live in the question. Question everything. Question your thoughts. Question your beliefs. Even if you're comfortable with them. Even if you settled on, you know what, this is what's working for me right now. Question it, because you can always go deeper. There is. I like to say there is no bottom to God. So keep questioning.
Yeah. All right. And I want to, before I take off, I want to say, if you've enjoyed what you've heard from Reverend Ogun here today, he is part of a fabulous team that does an amazing web podcast, Pub Theology Live. I just dropped a link in the comments. You can check that out on SoundCloud and I believe other podcast platforms. Check this out.
And all my Sunday talks are also available on all the podcast formats. Just search for Unity on the River Sunday Sermons. Look for Unity on the River on YouTube, and you'll find all my talks there as well.
Yeah. And Rev Z hangs out at the Center for Spiritual Living Denver, and you can catch his talks on their properties, Facebook and YouTube as well. So thanks for being with us today. Reverend Ogun, thanks for being with us. I hope you'll come back again sometime.
Oh, absolutely.
If it's not too early for you.
It'll always be too early, but I'll still go.
Perfect. All right, folks, that's all we've got for today on Ministers Talking Ship. We'll be back next Friday. Until then, peace and blessings.
Peace and blessings.
And thanks for listening to this week's episode of Ministers Talking. We'll be back again next week with more commentary on current affairs, world events, and any other our ministers want to talk about. And if you found value here, please share our with your friends. Until next time, peace and blessings.